Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second of the Intelligent Community Forum's webinars on the new connected countryside. Our topic today is intelligence from the ground up, the story of how a rural municipality bordering the city of Edmonton is building an open access broadband network and using it to spread economic growth from its eastern edge next to the big city to its most rural corners. My name is Norm Jackness, and I'm Senior Fellow of the Forum. I lead the ICF's Rural Imperative, which applies to rural areas and small cities or towns what ICF has learned from 15 years' experience identifying intelligent communities. This work also builds on the ideas I developed for the U.S. Conference of Mayors and the National Association of Counties in the U.S. on future-oriented economic growth strategy. Before joining ICF, I was director, Cisco's IBSG Public Sector Group, the company's Open Innovation Group, where my focus was on economic growth, innovation, and the future of technology. And before Cisco, I was Technology Commissioner for Westchester County, New York, when it was one of ICF's top 7. I should also give you a bit of background about the Intelligent Community Forum. There we go. The Intelligent Community Forum is two things. We are a global network of cities, metro areas, and counties recognized as intelligent communities that collaborate on economic and social development. We are also a think tank that studies how intelligent communities use information and communications technologies to create sustainable success. Our network consists of more than 160 cities, metro areas, and counties on 5 continents. And something that makes us really different is that we study communities with populations as little as 15,000 up to 8 million. Because we believe, based on evidence, that size, scale, and wealth are not determining factors in community success in our new century. Indeed, this century is an age of disruption driven by the unbelievable growth of digital technologies and their penetration into every aspect of business, government, and our social and cultural lives. In that age of disruption, intelligent communities are those that use the same digital technologies that cause all the disruption to build inclusive prosperity, solve social problems, and enrich their cultures. This is the second of a series of webinars we're producing that is part of what we hope will advance a new connected countryside. These are virtual conference events that focus on one of the biggest challenges of our time, to re-energize the economies of rural regions, to help them retain talent and grow businesses that provide good incomes, and give their cultures a global sounding board that reinforces their relevance. We look forward to growing it into an online platform where the community leaders, residents, institutions, and businesses of rural areas can connect and exchange advice, share resources, and attract mutual investment. It's a big, hairy, audacious goal, and we are continuing to advance it today. Experts at the UN tell us that most of us will be living in massive cities by 2050, where no doubt we all will be as happy, connected, and frantically busy as the young woman on the left. And that will doom our rural areas to stagnation and decay, where folks will live in shacks. The next generation, like the young woman on the right, will move away, and the old folks will gradually die off. That's the typical vision, and we think it is completely outmoded. The broadband revolution offers rural areas the chance to overcome the barriers of smallness, remoteness, and lack of connection among people. And many of them are grabbing that opportunity. In reality, the biggest success factors powering growth in both urban and rural areas are infrastructure and imagination. Cities have always led in part by virtue of their infrastructure, which is easier to fund and build when it can serve millions instead of thousands. But the infrastructure of the 21st century isn't your grandmother's infrastructure. This chart shows the cost per kilometer to install a paved road, a water main, an electricity line or gas main. Roads are really valuable, but also really expensive. The other classic kinds of infrastructure are cheaper by far. But even cheaper is the infrastructure of broadband communications, whether wireless or fiber optic networks. Some of our most innovative rural communities are exploring that fact to equip themselves with high-quality digital infrastructure and then leveraging that to attract investment to create opportunities, to grow their economies, and to connect people to the world. It takes great imagination and a lot of determination to pull that off, but imagination is likely to be found in the small, smart places of the world as it is in the big urban centers. The result is a unique new opportunity, innovative, investment-ready economies that also offer the quality of life of the countryside, natural beauty, clean air, peace, quiet, and neighborliness, things very hard to find in a bustling urban core. So we're going to dive into an example of one of those today. But first, a few housekeeping notes. All attendees will be in listen-only mode at this point. Q&A, you can submit questions using the questions panel. Recording the webinar will be available on ICF's website later on. Technical support in the U.S., at least, is toll-free in North America, 855-352-9002. Now, it's my pleasure to introduce our speaker, Barb Scully. Barb Scully has been working in the area of community economic development for several years and started working on the Smart Parkland project as the Connected Communities Coordinator a year and a half ago. She believes that assuring people have access to broadband is a true social and economic driver. Tackling the barriers and discovering the opportunities for rural communities is a challenge that Parkland County has embraced as it moves forward with a Smart Parkland initiative. As a small business owner in Spruce Grove, Ms. Scully appreciates the importance of community support in the success of such ventures. It is with that experience that Ms. Scully co-founded Talk of the Town, a media business in the tri-municipal region that promotes local business and residents. She's also a graduate of Simon Fraser University. Barb?
Hi, Norm. Thanks a lot. Get onto my screen. Can everybody see my screen now? Perfect. So my name is Barb Scully. I have been with Parkland County for a year and a half now. I worked on a small project under the Smart Parkland project for a couple of years, but it led me to this position. So today I'm going to tell you more the story of Parkland County and how we got this far and where we're going with our project. We have some different challenges being our version of rural. So I'll start from the beginning, if my screen works. Okay, so Parkland County is a rural county. We're just west of Edmonton, for anyone that doesn't know where that is. So it's Alberta, Canada. Edmonton is a major center, and we're literally the grass west of it, and we go 90 kilometers out, so about an hour away. Geographically, we're really spread out. We have 13 people per square kilometer. We do have 2 urban centers in the middle of ours. So they're not part of our municipality, but they're part of our region, Spruce Grove and Stony Plain. We have a variety of different things going on. We have industry, acreages, agriculture, small business, some major resource extraction, resort communities. The western 2/3 of the county is primarily agriculture and resource extraction. There isn't a lot of population density, so that gives a ton of challenges there. We're actually, I noticed in our write-up, it was pointed out to me that we're only a few hours from the Rocky Mountains. We're actually quite far off from the oil sands. We're a lot more south of them. So Parkland's had a ton of issues like any other rural community. We have a ton of industrial growth going on. People aren't wanting to move out to acreages and into the rural communities anymore. The people that are here are starting to migrate into the larger urban centers. And the people that are staying for now, the rural residents, the businesses, they really need high speed. They want it for education purposes, for business purposes, and just for lifestyle purposes. And then we have our whole agricultural sector, and they're getting a lot of pressures from the urban encroachment. So why would we want to become an intelligent community? So we were one of the top 21 communities, and we were really lucky. The original founder of this project had taken it to our council, and they really bought into it. They understood that if we wanted to be a rural resilient community, that we needed to go forward and create broadband opportunities. They started out by doing the tower infrastructure. So there was all the pillars of intelligent communities, but that was really the focus in the beginning, was getting the infrastructure in place, because being in rural, it was a lot of dial-up still. There's some satellite services that really don't help us out a lot at all. They can't get what they need for capacity out of it. and they started making a plan from there. And they wanted to really enlighten the innovation that was in our community already and support our community activities throughout. So we had a lot of barriers. So we have large distances with low population densities. So you could have a really agricultural area. So you have to really look at that. Are the internet providers going to come in, because they're not going to get the cost recovery on their equipment? It's not economical for them. You may have a provider in a higher density area, but just because of topography, hills, trees, things like that, it doesn't actually meet the needs of every resident. It's not typically a municipal government service for us to go out and put the infrastructure in. And a lot of people are saying, well, if you wait, someone else will do it, and they won't. We have a capacity issue, so we can get the connectivity out, but we can't get the capacity that the businesses and the residents need. And another big issue we've had is actually defining rural. So we go to a ton of different conferences and different engagements, and people say we're rural, we have 200,000 people or 50,000 people. We have 30,000 in a large landmass. So our issues become really the vast area that we have to actually get the connectivity over. Like when you go into rural things, they may have a sensor that's gone down or fiber issues. For us, being we're only on a tower and going with the backhaul system, we have things like we get calls that cows have knocked over our fences and that we actually have to pay to repair, and they've rubbed themselves down on the guy wires and we're repairing those. Like, we are truly a rural issue. So it was 2014 that we became a Smart 21 based on the pillars that most people on this call know already: broadband connectivity, knowledge workforce, innovation, digital inclusion, sustainability, marketing, and advocacy. So we took those and we just took the pillars, and for us to tweak them for our community, we just changed them a little bit. We made connectivity, and capacity because we had such capacity issues. We did broadband economy and knowledge workforce, innovation, social inclusion, which includes digital inclusion, life cycle maintenance and sustainability, because we wanted to make sure that we could actually sustain our infrastructure that we were creating, marketing and advocacy, and environment. So we really worked on that with our community to start promoting and having these pieces to make sure our residents know they can learn, create, and innovate within Parkland County. If we go through our different models that we have, so we started with connectivity and capacity, and we have an infrastructure model, and we've used the utility model. We've created 20 towers. There's one missing on this map, but we've placed them throughout the counties. They're tier 1s, 2s, and 3s. They range from 350 feet to 100 feet. We have backhaul connections. We're making sure everything's technology neutral, and we're trying to create a network. And now we're looking at creating a fiber strategy in 2017 to see how do we start tying that together and make sure it really is truly working like a network. When we looked at, for us, the broadband economy and knowledge workforce, we want to make sure that our home-based businesses were supported and people had access to distance learning and webinars for business. So we create programming. We either have in place or we are creating things that all support this. So we've joined a virtual farmers market, so our residents can actually have a place online to have that showcase and have that online selling feature there. We're working on STEM learning with our libraries. We have 5 really rural libraries, being they are so spread out and they have small population going into them. So being not every library could afford a maker space, which gave them a disadvantage against the urban centers, we created a mobile maker space, and it's in a case and they can take it library to library. We're looking at different things for the economic development driver that it can be, that we will make sure that we have investment attraction pieces in, especially some of our major corridors, and even down to agriculture. We're exploring different ways that we can bring technology into the field and workforce training for other people. Our next pillar for us was innovation. So we're really looking at different technologies to support the rural businesses, and even simple things as meetups. So urban centers have lots of meetups and things for innovators and our traditional geeks and nerds and people exploring technology. Those are harder to find in a rural setting because everyone's spread out, or being everything is online. They don't need the physical connection all the time. So we're going to try to create those spaces for them to come. We have different events, like Tech Fest is one we've had 3 years in a row now, and it's a trade show style, and it brings the technology to the residents and businesses. So you could have everything from a computer store to a blogger and all those pieces. things like interactive tourism opportunities. Being rural, that's an economic driver, we're looking right now at some virtual reality options that are there in order to encourage that as well. We're looking at having a makers fair in the spring. And the other piece we've had to do is make sure we're really defining what innovation is. It's not always technology based. Like it turns out we have this amazing skateboard and snowboard manufacturing company on a farm, but they're selling globally. So we wouldn't even know about them if it wasn't through word of mouth, because they're not necessarily making their money in our community, but they are expanding outwards. For our next one, we looked at social inclusion. One of the problems with rural is a lot of people haven't had the internet before or don't have the finances to even accommodate that. So you've got our more western region where they're finally getting some high-speed internet, but they don't necessarily know how to use it. So we want to make sure that whether it's our seniors that are learning from our youth on how to open a Gmail account or a Facebook account or just to Google things to get information, that they're getting those technical skills. We want to make sure that all our residents are getting it. And we want to have things like local community hotspots. So we already have our libraries, all have fiber to them, but now we're slowly getting our community halls set up so they can actually be hotspots, because we recognize that people are sitting in parking lots and doing their homework or checking their email because they don't have the technology at home. So we really want to make sure everyone has the access and to create distance learning centers within those libraries as well so they can have that hub and people can learn from one another. We also have a local literacy group that we're partnering with, and they'll be going around the community to offer digital literacy classes. And we're working with some it's called Alberta Parenting for the Future, and making sure that they have the resources they have a lot of young single moms on social assistance, and making sure they understand that the internet isn't just for Googling and music and online dating and social media, that they can actually use as a learning tool or a business tool to be an entrepreneur. Our next pillar is our life cycle maintenance and sustainability. So as we put our towers up, we recognize that we have to be able to maintain them and fix them. So we make sure that annually now we're putting funds aside that can keep going, so it's a sustainable thing. We also lease tower space out to internet providers, and we've expanded to cell phones, to sensors, to anything that really could go on a tower. And we make sure our fees are reasonable enough that the providers can go on and get the service to our citizens, but we also want to make sure we're doing cost recovery on operations. We'll probably never get our money back on the actual bills, but if on our monthly operations, we're probably about a year and a half away to a break even. That being said, we have 20 towers. Some do really well and some do really poorly, but they'll just offset each other. And we want to make sure the towers are flexible enough that we can use all sorts of new technologies on them so we're not limited. Our next part is marketing and advocacy. So this is a big piece being rural because everybody's going out advocating. We just came back from a conference and everybody was talking about advocacy with our province and with their federal things. Yet they don't know why they want the broadband. So they want the broadband, they want the internet access for their residents, but if they don't know the end game on what they want as an economic driver or a community driver, there's not a lot of point. So we've partnered with 8 other municipalities that are all very rural like us. Some are even more rural, more remote than us. And as a group, we go and when we have to advocate to the province to get more access to things like the SuperNet or those things, we do that. We make sure when we have events, we partner with post-secondaries and industries. And we make sure we do marketing on 2 levels. So we market to anyone that could come on and create revenue on the towers, but we also make sure we market to the residents because it comes down right back to that advocacy loop. If we don't know what we're doing it for, there's no point in actually creating the infrastructure. And we're looking at more ways to do online and interactive public engagement so that we can go to the residents instead of trying to draw them into us all the time. For our environment platform, we're looking at different programs to assist farmers and ranchers to increase ecological goods and services and improve their farming practices like the ALICE program. We're taking a look at carbon credits to improve tower installation practices. We do the traditional e-waste roundups. We've done some really fun things. We've now purchased 2 benches that are solar and they actually charge your phones, and we put those in public spaces so that people can enjoy them. So some of the things we learned by being one of the very rural communities out here that is doing this, you can't just say you're a smart community, and we can't just put the infrastructure in and think if you put it in, great, now we're smart. You actually have to look and do a needs assessment on what your residents need. And much like an urban center, different pockets of residents have different needs. So to make sure you're meeting those through training or workshop or services, so we really try to capture that. How you bring it into your organization. So if we can't get the buy-in from our council and staff, we're definitely not going to get it externally. So we're very fortunate that our council gets it, but getting everyone to use the technology and explore it and bring us ideas and us take ideas out. That, and now we're really working on creating that culture in the community of innovation. So we want to actually draw people out and say you're an innovator, and we want to celebrate that. And it's not just about technology. Taking the holistic approach and making sure it's a flexible platform. So we have things like some of our towers have providers on it, and the changes they've even had to do in the equipment they're using in 5 years, the technology being so rapid, and making sure that the technology we are putting in can accommodate it, so we're not always 5 steps behind. We want to make sure we're keeping up the times. 5 years ago, nobody thought about the cloud and the capacity and Netflix and gaming and all these things going to the level they did so rapidly. So now we have to adapt to that. So we're taking different things like looking at how close is fiber to our towers, which towers already have fiber to them, and start creating that network better. And just trying to be collaborative with our surrounding neighbors, externally, everyone we can actually collaborate with, we do. And really looking at how we design our rural communities. So for our communities, we have 12 hamlets and villages. So a lot of those have died off over the time. So things like we have an area called Whistle, and it's quite far west. It's on a major corridor. It could be an economic driver, and it could support really great businesses. But how do we get the fiber into it, and how do we start looking at making that a really smart area of our community and designing around that? If we go into a hamlet revitalization, identifying which hamlets that we could actually make sure we bring the technology in, it might drive us to have brick and mortar or home-based businesses or more education pockets. So as we go into our overall fiber strategy through 2017 and tie that into the towers we already have, we're going to try to make sure that we can actually revitalize those communities and make them more resilient and get some sustainability out of them. Also really focusing on our community halls. We have 26 community halls, which has its challenges all in itself. In an urban center, you might have one community hall with 10,000 people that go to that hall or are geared for that hall, whereas we have 30,000 people and 26 community halls. So not all may survive over the next few years, but if we can start turning them back into community spaces, we have some that have smart boards and audiovisual systems and the Wi-Fi, right down to running farmers markets. By having the Wi-Fi in there, their vendors can actually do better business. So creating them to actually be a hub again. And essentially that is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Barb. That's great. God, you're doing impressive stuff. I guess everybody can see why you're among the top most intelligent communities in the world. We already have a number of questions. I encourage others of you who have questions to send them in. I'm going to sort of start with questions in the order in which they came. So first, Barb, can you speak to any successes that you've had to date directly related to deploying broadband in the Parkland County area?
From the infrastructure side, like our 20 towers, we are at the point that we've got several providers on them. We do need to increase them, and we need to expand what we're putting on them. But I think the 20 towers alone is already a success. And by us taking another look at the fiber strategies coming forward, that'll actually expand our network, and we'll be one of the first really rural communities that will actually have that infrastructure in place.
Interesting. Okay. You said that people, this is the second question, you said that people are drawn to large centers from Parkland County. Have you done a survey or a study about why people or companies decide to stay in Parkland County? Is broadband seen as an attractor or part of the solution?
I don't know if they've done a survey before I came in-house. I've only been here a year and a half, but I know through conversation, even since I've been here, one area that we don't have great coverage or capacity in, I had a realtor, she worked from home. She had to move back into town because she couldn't even upload her files. So there was no point in her having a home-based business, which a lot of the businesses out here are, being we don't have malls and those types of things. So she just moved back into town. And just the feedback as you go through with the residents and the younger generation and even the older ones, that they're recognizing that their kids and their grandkids have moved because they need to go to post-secondary or for job opportunities, but even keeping them connected to home by not having the soft skills that come with actually having the internet or lack of.
Okay. This is a common question in rural areas that are nearby big cities. So the question is, can you speak to the advantages Parkland receives by its proximity to Edmonton in terms of skilled workforce and established industry or even other things?
Well, we do have a really large industrial park within our region. We have 3, but one's quite developed. So we do get a lot of skilled workforce coming into there. But if we want to increase that and keep it growing, we need to create our own workforce as well. And we need to shift some of that more west, like further away from the urban center, because where that is really close to Edmonton, like it's within 6 minutes. So it's right on the doorstep. But when you go further west and there's less job opportunities and you have the issues we've had this year with like the oil industry, oil and gas, you want to make sure that people are diversified. And if we can create that, that would be amazing. But as much as we bring people in from Edmonton for our workforce, they take them out to Edmonton as well. And essentially, if you're rural and people are driving to the city for work, they're also spending their dollars there before they come back out.
Right. Right. So the next question is a little bit more quantitative, I guess, version of something I think you spoke about. And this is the question. For a rural area, you have a lot going on, or is possible. Are you able to measure the value of these activities in attracting jobs and investment and in retaining and attracting people to the area? I guess this is a question about the kind of metrics you might use for your success.
Actually, if you ask me, in several months, we'll be starting to collect them. We're just setting up our KPIs now for our areas. And so once we get a handle on those, we'll make a baseline. So prior to this, we've never had a true baseline on this project. It's been kind of take the pillars and start fitting in projects under each pillar. So now, between now and New Year's, we're creating a KPI system, and we're going to have some tracking measures. So by this time next year, we'll actually have a baseline that anybody's welcome to see.
Good. Okay. Next question. You've mentioned marketing and advocacy. What kind of marketing are you actually doing? Are you using social media, web-based promotion, print, speaking events, etc.? What are you doing?
All of the above. So for marketing to the internet providers, we were trying to do it ourselves in cold calling, but of course there's a lot going on. So we've hired a firm that deals in vertical real estate right now, and they're doing some of the marketing to the internet providers. And the ones that are already on the towers are pretty good. They're consistently coming back, and as they have enough revenue, they're going on to those towers. When it comes to the resident piece and the business piece, we are doing Facebook, Twitter. We'll be looking at Instagram and Pinterest in the 2017. We're doing speaking engagements. We host a lot of events, and we've done a whole marketing campaign with Learn, Create, and Innovate, and we've done an infographic for each and a video for each so that they can actually be engaged and use those pieces. And we're also going to start meetups. So for a different type of people, we've had meetups for Chamber of Commerce and all those types over the years, and now we're going to try one. We call it Geeks, Nerds, and Innovators, but we have to find a more formal name before we start it in February. But that's one of the goals, to start that conversation and get more external input on our project, because right now it's been very centralized with here and people doing the same thing in other areas, and we want to make sure we're getting a better needs assessment of the residents as well.
Interesting. Okay. This is a financial question. Did your municipalities pay for the towers, fiber backhaul, or was there funding from any other levels of government?
We had municipal funding, so we had a provincial money. So grant dollars went into the infrastructure, but the operating is actually tax dollars. So we're really making sure that we're getting the revenue coming in and marketing to those other providers and cell phone providers and anyone that can utilize the infrastructure. So the actual build was funded by grant dollars, $6.8 million over 8 years. And I think it worked out to $250,000 of that wasn't grant money, but the actual operation dollars do come out of tax.
Interesting. Okay. Did you require the ISPs to offer a minimum package of services to the residents?
No. We have 3 or 4 ISPs going in right now. They're all pretty comparable. It really is coming down for them on who's going with them is service levels. And the fact that some can get in some areas and others can't. But their price point is very, very similar to one another, I noticed.
Okay. I'm going to skip the next question because you'll love it, so we're going to go to a more practical question first. Transportation can be a huge issue with rural communities. You mentioned how many people run businesses out of their home, but what about businesses that cannot function like that? Is it easy to get around Parkland County?
You have to drive. You pretty much have to have a license in Parkland County. We do have, from our industrial area to Edmonton, we do have bus service as of this year, running a couple times, like in the morning and in the evenings at peak times. But other than that, out here you really do need to have transportation on your own because you may be 40 minutes from where you're at to an urban center where you need to be.
Interesting. Okay. What are some challenges that you continue to have that are beyond the financial issues and, sort of technical operations? What are the challenges that you have?
I think topography. So you can have a subdivision of acreage dwellers, and Mr. Smith in Lot 1 gets perfect service from his internet provider, and Mr. Jones next door is suddenly his house is 10 feet lower and his trees are 20 feet higher and he can't get any service. So you can go household to household and it doesn't mean they're getting the same level of service by going with the towers. Like we really need to look at long term in as many areas as we can to go into a fiber to the home. Because that's probably our biggest challenge, or the fact that when residents call in and they think they have the worst service in Canada, and then when we actually send them the CRTC map and they start recognizing that we actually have really good service for a rural community and that just Canada sometimes tends to be behind on the whole internet piece.
Interesting. Actually, it's true for most of North America. So, anyway, another question. Would you like to attract foreign direct investment to your community? And if so, what plans do you have to go about pursuing that investment?
At this point, I know we would like to attract it, but we have no plans in place. That is part of us doing our strategy over the next year. The project's been going for 8 years, but we never even had an actual, truly written down strategic plan. So that's the piece we're working on over the next couple months, and we'll tie that with our economic diversification department here as well, and the two together. I know by taking places like Entwistle, if we put fiber in, and it's a major corridor, that's a really big attractor. So part of it is us getting the proper infrastructure in place so we have it as a selling point as well. And then from there, I'll have to see where we go with it.
Okay, and if you wanted to promote Parkland County to attract investors and talents, what would you lead in with your pitch? What's your elevator speech?
Oh, that's a tough one. Who asked that one?
Somebody in the audience who obviously wants to steal it.
I don't know if I have one at this point. Can you ask me in a year if you email me in 6 months and I'll have one after I've done the strategic plan? I think it'll really depend on what we do with our fiber strategy, because until we know where that's going to lay out and how it's going to roll out, those will end up being our key focus areas as well to go out and attract those businesses.
Okay, one question I think you mentioned this before, but just to make sure people understand, how many towers have fiber to them right now?
Right now we have 20 towers. 5 have fiber to them. We've been talking to some of the larger organizations like TELUS and Bell, sorry guys. And TELUS hasn't got us their map yet, but Bell has identified 4 areas that they have fiber within 6 kilometers, and TELUS is going to do the same for us, as well as now TELUS is co-locating on 2 of our towers. And every time they do, they tie their own fiber in. So now when we go to do our fiber strategy, we can actually look at more pockets of fiber throughout our county, because before that you had to rely on the SuperNet or what you already had. And now it's opened up like twice as many areas and handholds that we can get into now.
Okay, I'm going to ask the question I sort of held off because I think this is a good opportunity. This question begins by saying, impressive rural program. I thought you'd like that compliment.
Thanks.
Have you thought of sharing your stories and solutions with other rural communities beyond the greater Edmonton region, for instance, to share with international rural communities?
Yeah, we're actually, part of our strategic plan will be doing that, and we're making kind of a handbook, like a guidebook. It'll be a living document so we can keep adding to it, but that's part of our 2017 strategy, is to actually create that, and it'll all be open for anyone that wants access to it, and we'll have it online. So it's part of the
Okay.
creation process too.
And I would add, I think if you look at your screen, in addition to the worldwide ICF movement, there's actually an intelligent community forum in Canada alone. And that's one way that I see a lot of intelligent communities in Canada are sharing ideas, so I thought I might point that out.
Yep, and
Um,
through the newsletter as well.
yeah. Okay. If you had the choice, this is the next question. If you had the choice, would you recommend a county invest in towers or go straight to investing in fiber to the home instead? Where are the dollars best spent for return on investment?
That's a tough one. If you have a community like ours, you can't do fiber to the home everywhere. Like our fiber will come off our towers. So if you take like a subdivision area, so we've got one area we're looking at, and there's fiber to a tower away from that. So trying to figure out how to do this visually without you guys being able to see my hands. We have one tower that has fiber going to it, and then probably about 20 kilometers away, we have another tower that's right in a high-density subdivision area. So we need to backhaul from the tower with fiber. We have to backhaul to the other one, and then the fiber will feed out. If we were trying to just fiber it, we couldn't do it. Our population density is too low to even make it manageable. There'll probably be areas of the county, high agricultural areas, we may never fiber, that we may just hopefully improve the backhaul on it. So yeah, I would definitely do the towers first. I would really look at long term though, like over 10 years if you're putting your towers in, where do you want to look at having fiber to the home afterwards?
Okay. Next question is a tough one too. So what would you say is missing in your community?
I think the uptake, getting the residents to realize the municipality and what we're doing. So part of that is through our marketing that we always have to step up our game and get better at. It's only been a year and a half that we've been really marketing to the community. But you have some residents that are used to having the internet, so they take it for granted. And then you have the other ones that wonder, what the heck are we doing in the first place and what does it have to do with us? But getting that resident engagement. I know of another rural community. They're a small town, but they have so many community volunteers. They've been doing this for a really long time, and they really got the community member uptake. So that's the area we're missing, and we really need to start looking at. If we can get the community members engaged in the conversation and the progression of the progress, it'll have more sustainability to it, and it'll be more successful.
Okay, and here's another question, interesting policy question. If Canada agreed to broadband as a human right, would you demand fiber and get rid of the towers, or are they deemed satisfactory? The towers, that is.
They go hand in hand. So being so rural, we would be really hard pressed to just do fiber. So if you look, you could go 4 kilometers between houses, you're probably not going to run that fiber. So for us, being truly rural, we would have a combination of both, that they actually serve what we need to be done. But yeah, so no, I wouldn't get rid of the towers at all. And they have other purposes. You still have the cellular phones. In our area, new subdivisions aren't even putting landlines in anymore. It's only cellular. So if you have a brand new housing area, they're not going to put landlines. So there's still a purpose for the towers for that, as well as the internet providers, GPS for farm equipment. We have a lot more applications we can look at. So no, we wouldn't get rid of them.
Okay. There's sort of a follow-up question to this. Is your competition running fiber throughout the community? Is that something that you see or are concerned about?
I'm not concerned at all. The more people that run fiber, the better. So we have the 2 urban centers. They already have some fiber in, and they're doing fiber strategies as well. Edmonton has gotten a big influx of money, and they'll put fiber in. But some of our other neighbors, they're looking at strategies and exploring the same as we are. So it becomes a regional thing. If somebody else puts fiber in, it's easier for us to say we need fiber and to really advocate both to municipal, provincial, and federal levels. So no, I don't think it's a bad thing at all.
Okay, good. Another question. What are the broadband speeds you're seeing through the towers? I'd say up and down, I'm curious. That wasn't my question.
You know what?
I'm curious about that.
I could actually pull the numbers, but it so ranges. Like it really comes down to topography again. So you can have one person that is getting next to nothing, and the guy 20 feet from him just because of where he sits in a tree line. I don't actually have a tracking system for that either at this point, but I could put out to my providers, and I could actually give it to you to send out if you wanted, or post it onto the newsletter.
Okay, that's good. One of the things that we've at ICF seen around the world is the increase in precision agriculture. The use of sensors, even actually robotics on farms. And that sometimes has been a driver in local interest in having more broadband. Has that been a factor in Parkland County?
Yeah, it becomes a big deal, especially the larger producers. They want to be able to do precision agriculture. Some of the small farmers don't bother. They're more niche markets, but it goes two ways. So if you're the small farmer that's a niche market, they're probably using the broadband for marketing purposes and selling their products direct to consumers. But then with the larger producers, then they're actually looking at having that broadband for precision agriculture. So it comes across the board. It just depends on which way they're using it, but it's a huge thing needed for agriculture.
Okay. There's another financial question. How much was the initial investment to install 20 towers?
We're at 6.8 million at this point in 8 years.
That's pretty good. Okay. Another interesting question. Are you becoming a bedroom community for Edmonton, which therefore means you will gain density?
I think we've always been a bedroom community. It depends what people want. Like if they want to live on the outskirts of Edmonton but still in an urban center, they may go into Spruce Grove and Stony Plain, which are in the middle of us, but they're separate municipalities. And we've always had people come in. It's if they stay or not. So a lot depends on their jobs. So if they're closer to Edmonton, it's a quick commute. They may have more access. They'll get fiber probably sooner than anyone else out here, like the western areas. But we have a far, like 90 kilometers from Edmonton is the end of our community. So we become a bedroom community, maybe our first two divisions, but not our other four.
Okay.
We really are different areas of us.
Interesting. Okay, and actually there was a follow-up question to the one about precision agriculture. Are you thinking as part of your strategy to become a demonstration region for ag tech?
If it was up to me, I'd say yes, but I'll have to leave that up to mayor and council at some point to negotiate that.
Okay. Here's another question. We've got a great audience today, by the way. Is your municipality providing service to consumers, or do you provide it to ISPs who then provide to consumers?
So we build the infrastructure, and then what happens is an ISP can come to us and rent space in a tower. So for $250, it gets them 2 meters of tower space and rack area and power and battery backup and monitoring and all those pieces. They in turn are responsible for going out to the community and selling their product. We have the listing of who's available on our website. We get probably 10 to 15 calls a week asking who the internet providers are in our area. But we're basically landlords. We're leasing out vertical real estate for them, but it saves them a lot of money because for one ISP to come on per tower, it's about $40,000 to $50,000 investment on their part just for the equipment. So then they look at wherever areas they go into, they want 3 years on return of investment.
Okay, and here's the general question in terms of the Parkland effort in relation to what ICF talks about. So you've talked about the 6 pillars of Smart Parkland's plan. How important has it been to focus on all of these factors as opposed to just 1 or 2?
I think it's really important to focus on all because if we did a proper needs assessment and put it out to the community and had really good feedback, I think we'd have people that are hitting every pillar that they're interested in. But as a rural community, you're going to have like connectivity has more weight sometimes. But like I said, if you don't have the knowledge workforce piece and working with people to make sure they're getting that education with it, you can't have one without the other. So you can't have just connectivity but not teach people to use the internet. Otherwise, you're just putting sticks up in the ground for nothing. And you can't turn around and actually worry about social inclusion that people need to know use the internet to have better quality of life if you can't provide the internet. So I think all 6 pillars actually go hand in hand.
That's great, yeah. And one of the things we've observed is that rural communities understand this actually much better than a lot of the urban communities who are focused much more just on the technology infrastructure. Another question, can you speak briefly about Parkland in terms of quality of life? What makes it nice to live there?
Okay, well, I actually had to pay a bill that had a cow damaging my work. I don't think people get that in urban centers. That was the highlight of the day. Like, nobody's had that yet. It's just overall, it's really nice. So we have everything. So if you want to go to a park or hiking or take up any of those tourism pieces, we have all that. We're close enough to the city that you can go and get all those amenities. But it's just a really nice, quiet way of life. We really promote having local businesses. You have a ton of businesses that are in people's homes, so we're filled with artisans and people that are making things, as well as we have these amazing brick and mortar little stores staggered throughout. We have great community with our halls and our libraries and our school system, so there's no reason not to live out here. And it's quiet.
Which is nice. So I actually had another question for you. How much use so far has there been of video, live video conferencing and that kind of thing? Partly what triggered that question is the virtual farmer markets. There are a couple of places that actually use video of the farmland for community-supported agriculture, so the people who eventually eat this stuff can see it growing. Is there anything like that going on there? Any other uses of video now that you have broadband?
Most of the video has been just for advertising purpose, but funny enough, because we bought a really fun Mondo board for the office now, so we can do some great video conferencing. So we thought we'd start internally. So last week I sent out an email to everyone within Parkland County that works here and says, who wants to learn how to do video conferencing? I've hired an instructor. She's willing to come in on the 8th of December and teach you how to host your webinars so that we can get our services at county really out to the residents, like how to fill out a development permit. Really anything, any department could use it. We had so much response internally because they've been asked for it that we increased it to 2 afternoons because we couldn't fit everybody in one day. I think we have 26 staff registered representing every department except for 2 within the organization at this point. So agriculture wants to do webinars and assessment and all those things. And then now we're also looking at, we're working with a lady that does virtual reality. So for tourism, she's going to come, and we have one fantastic park that gets used in the winter because anybody that's ever been to Alberta, we have a lot of winter. So we can't just focus on summer things. So to do different activities. So she's going to come out and do a virtual reality piece for the park that we can use for tourism and promoting that. So it's suddenly just coming to be that people are recognizing they're taking webinars, because everybody here takes webinars because there's a lot of distance learning that goes on. So now we're flipping it around so that we can start giving webinars and using the video conferencing.
Fantastic. So just to wrap up, for those communities who are on this webinar who are not as far advanced as Parkland County is, what would you tell them to start with in sort of the first 6 months of an initiative of this kind?
I think take the pillars and make out a wish list with all the pillars that are there. Take the 6 pillars, make a wish list if you could have a perfect world. What would you like to do for your community when you look at your community within those pillars? And then take another look and see what could you actually do right now. And then build it up from there. A lot of the stuff we do, we go to the ICF conference and we see people with these giant data centers and these really cool things. And we're just as proud that if we can run a distance learning night out of our library, because that's where our community's at, and very grassroots, and build it from the bottom up. So I think you just got to make a wish list and then figure out where to start and just ready, fire, aim.
Fantastic. Okay, Barb, I'd like to thank you very much. This was an excellent and in-depth presentation. I hope everybody in our audience found the webinar useful and that you gained some insights that you can use where you live. For those of you who would like it, there will be a recording available later on the ICF website. And we invite you to join us for future webinars about the new Connected Countryside, which will begin in 2017, and we'll be announcing them soon. Thank you again, and the best of luck to all of you in your similar initiatives.
Thanks, Matt.